those kind of downgrades, markets have a big problem with that.
Tragedy in Newtown, you're right. The tragedy in Newtown thrusting the issue of mental illness into the national spotlight. Exact details about Adam Lanza's mental state are just beginning to emerge. But how do we deal with this as a nation? Congressman Tim Murphy, co-chair of the House Doctors Caucus, chairman of the Mental Health Caucus. He's also a clinical child psychologist. Sir, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What do we need to know? What do we need to understand?
Well, we need to understand as a nation that this is a mental illness issue, and we cannot keep pushing it aside and pretending it's other than that. After each one of these tragedies, after every suicide, after every mass shooting, the underlying issue in the vast majority of these things is it is a mental illness issue. And Congress talks about it and the people talk about it and then we leave it alone. We can't do that anymore. We need to deeply understand each one of these cases, do more research, understand the links between violence and mental illness, understand that most mental illness does not lead to any violence. But let's talk about those core issues and do the things we need to do.
There's a suggestion from the White House that it will perhaps push for tougher legislation. Is that the answer?
Well, they're looking for tougher legislation to deal with guns. It's much like if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, you need this treatment, says, no, I don't want to do that, I want to do this. The common link between these people is not what was in their hands, but what was in their hearts and what was in their minds. And you have socially isolated people with various, a wide range of diagnoses, schizophrenia, bipolar, other illnesses taking place there, who had a propensity towards violence, obsessed in many cases with violent games, continue to rehearse violent actions in households where parents, even well-intended, good-meaning parents, found themselves with someone who was overwhelming, or even when parents in some cases didn't know, such as the Virginia Tech shooting. Let's address the mental health issues.
Make sense of this. According to reports, and we walk with caution here because we really don't know. According to reports, there's no evidence that he was being treated with medication for mental illness. I mean, knowing the experience you have, what would that tell you?
Well, there's a couple of things in that. Again, we don't know whether or not he was being treated. Over 70% of the time when people are taking a psychiatric medication, it's prescribed by a non-psychiatrist. That's not appropriate. If you have someone with a diagnosable illness, you can get them treatment. In the vast majority of cases, there's great things that medication can do in conjunction also with psychotherapy. But another aspect of this, the parents of angry children, angry young adults find themselves in a situation where oftentimes they're overwhelmed, they're scared to death, and they have nowhere to turn. And sometimes all that is offered is if the child commits a crime, we'll put them in a juvenile detention facility. If the adult, put them in prison. Those aren't appropriate places to treat mental illness. But we have closed state hospitals. We've eliminated what's taking place in terms of treatment alternatives, and that's another barrier for families.
Just put a fine point on this. Mental illness is treatable, right?
Yes.
And the majority of those who suffer from mental illness, they don't show signs of violence, do they?
No, they don't. It's a very small percentage, particularly those who may have drug and alcohol abuse are actually ones that may show more violence. I was talking yesterday with the director of the National Institutes of Mental Health. We need more research and understanding this. We can probably identify more, but part of this too is you start to hear that people see signs of this through social media, through friends and family. They need to also speak up and make sure those parents are getting the encouragement they need to get help. And you still have colleges and institutions which don't even tell the parents when someone is at a risk to themselves or other people. And we have to make sure we remove or we deal with those laws where schools are not afraid to communicate with the parents as well.
If indeed he was suffering from Asperger's, does that explain anything?
No, Asperger's is not generally associated with violent behavior. It may have to do with some other links there of a very isolated person who does not have friends, other people to reach out to.
Yeah. Tim Murphy, thank you for your time. A Republican from Pennsylvania. Appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.
Well, with a long-awaited report on the Libya terror attacks now out, there are a lot of questions that are